Hi everyone, welcome you all to another episode of Identity in 15 powered by WSO2 Identity Server. Our topic today is developing a custom local authenticator for WSO2 Identity Server. So before moving forward, let me introduce myself. I'm Pamonda Vimalsari, a senior software engineer from WSO2 Identity and Access Management team. So let's see how we can implement the custom authenticator for IS. So if you have any questions related to today's session, you can post them in the YouTube live chat so I can take them at the end of the session. So let me introduce briefly what a local authenticator is. So the responsibility of local authenticators is to authenticate the user with locally available credentials. So the local authenticators are decoupled from the inbound authenticators. So these are the list of local authenticators that are available in the WSO2 Identity Server: Basic Authenticator, FIDO, X509 certificate, and TOTP. Out of these local authenticators, Basic Authenticator acts as the default local authenticator in the IS. So in today's session, we are going to implement a local authenticator from scratch. So for that, first we need to write the custom local authenticator, and then we need to deploy the authenticator in the identity server. And then to engage this local authenticator for one of our application, we need to configure a service provider in the identity server. And finally, we can try out this local authenticator by accessing the application. So this is the sample that we are going to implement. So let's say we need to log into an application using our mobile number. So instead of the username that we have, we provide the telephone number that is registered against us as the username in the login portal, so that the authentication logic will validate the credentials of the user identified by the given telephone number. Okay. So as I mentioned previously, the first step is to write the custom local authenticator. That means implementing the sample. So the local authenticator should be written as a Maven project, in a Maven project as a OSGI service. So the service should be implemented by extending the abstract application authenticator class. And also we need to implement the local application authenticator interface so that our sample will inherit the functionalities of the base class. And then we need to compile the project. After the compilation is successful, the compiled jar will be resides inside the sample local authenticator target folder. So to deploy this in the identity server, we need to copy this jar to the IS identity server home repository components droppings folder. And then we can start the server, and once we start the server, our sample will be deployed. Okay, so let's move to the demonstration part and see how we can implement this. So before moving to the demonstration, you can download the Identity Server latest version from the Identity Server website. So we have given the link in the YouTube description as well. So there are several options that you can, so once you go to the website, you can click on try it now button, and then you will be given with few installation options. So you can select the option that you need to run. So I have already downloaded the identity server up and running. So I will now move to the code details. So I have already created a Maven project and implemented the sample. So I will go through each of the methods and the classes that you need to implement. So as I mentioned earlier, so we need to write this as we need to create the Maven project and write it as a OSGI service. So I have written it, and this is the POM file of my sample. So since we need to execute a few functionalities available in the identity server itself, so I have added the identity frameworks dependencies. And then the other dependencies are to compile this as a OSGI service. Okay, so for the OSGI service, we need to have the service component. Okay, let me go through the details. So this is the service component class. So I have my code as inside the Java code. I have the package of WSO2 carbon auth local sample, and inside the internal package I have my service component. So here in the activate method I have registered my sample authenticator as a sample, as a service. Okay, and then the sample local authenticator class this is the sample local authenticator class. So as I mentioned previously, I have extended the abstract application authenticator and implements the local authenticator interface. So here we need to override the methods of the base class, abstract class. So getName method provides the name of the authenticator. So I have given as sample local authenticator. So then we need to provide a get friendly name is another friendly name for the local authenticator. So this will be displayed in the management console when we are configuring it. And the get context identifier method is sent with the request. This identifier is used to retrieve the state of the authentication or the logout flow. And then we need to implement the can handle method. This method basically indicates whether the authenticator can handle the authentication request. So if it cannot handle the request, it will return as false. Otherwise, it returns true. So in our use case, we need to have the username and the password. So in this can handle method, we check whether the request contains a username and the password. If it doesn't contain a username and password, it will return false. Then we have the initiate authentication request method. So this method is responsible for redirecting the redirecting the user to the login page. So we are using the default WSO2 IS login page. So if you want any other custom login page, you can define it here and redirect the request to the customized login page. Okay. So then we need to override the process authentication response method. This is the actual, this method contains the implementation for the custom logic. So we can get the username and the provided username and password from the request, and we can do the processing part here. So in my sample scenario, so we need to authenticate the user and user with the provided mobile phone number. So that we have a method called authenticate with ID in our user store provided in the user store manager. So we can call that method by providing the username, password, and the claim URI where the username is identified. I mean, in our case, we need to provide it as telephone number. So once we provide this to the backend, it will return the result, whether the user is authenticated or not. So if the user is authenticated, the status will be success. So then we can indicate that the user is a valid user, authenticated user. If the user is not authenticated, I mean, if the backend respond as a authenticated result as failure, then the user will be redirected to an error page saying that the user authentication failed due to invalid credentials. So that's it basically regarding the implementation. So let's try to, so now we need to compile this one. So since this will take some time, 1 or 2 minutes. So I have already compiled this and added this one to the droppings folder. So if we go to the let me go to the droppings folder. So I'm in the identity server directory. So if I go to the repository components droppings folder and list out the available jars, so you can see that our sample jar is already there. And then we need to run the identity server. Okay, so we need to go to the in folder and run the server. So we can start the server in the OSGI mode so that we can identify whether our component gets successfully deployed. So the command to run it server in the OSGI mode is we need to run the startup script, and then we can give the argument as -d OSGI console. So since a server takes few minutes to start, I have already started the server. So you can see that the server is running in the OSGI mode. So we can check whether sample is deployed properly. So you can see when I check the sample, our sample authenticator, it's the status is as active. That means the OSGI service is properly deployed and running. So now let's log into the management console. Let me go to the management console. Okay. So now we are going to configure the deployed local authenticator to one of our service providers. So I have already configured a service provider with the name pickup dispatch. So if we edit that, we go to the edit view of the service provider and go to the local and outbound authentication configuration part. So there you can find the authentication types. So by default, it will be selected as default. So we need to change it to the local authentication option that we have deployed. So I will select the local authentication radio button, and then from the drop down menu, we can select the, you can see the default authenticators that are available in the identity server. And in addition to that, we have the local authenticator that we deployed now. So I will select the local sample local authenticator that we deployed now and update the service provider. Okay, so now we need to try out the login for a user. So for that, I have already created a user with the name Alex, and in his profile, so I have given the telephone number. I have registered a telephone number as well. So the username will be Alex and the phone number is 171 333 4455. So now I will access my sample application. So this is the pickup dispatch application. Okay. So I have deployed the application in the Tomcat server that is running locally in my machine. So I will go click on the login button. Okay, now the user will be redirected to the default login page of the identity server. So here I will give the phone number of Alex as the username and password of Alex. Then I will be prompt for the consent to give access to my profile. So I will allow it. And then the user is successfully authenticated to the application. So you can see that even though we added a telephone number, the user is identified as Alex. Okay. So that's it. We have to. I have to do regarding the authentic implement and the custom local authenticator. So if you have any questions, we can take them now. So you can post them in our live chat of the YouTube live chat. So I can take them now. So yes, we have two questions. The first one is by Prudivi Ragwa. The same way how to create custom claim. So for creating custom claims, we can do it by the management console itself. So if you want to add any custom claim, let me show you how we can add the custom claim. So we can log into the management console, and in the claim sections, we can define any custom claims. So we can add it to existing dialect also we can add, otherwise we can define a dialect and add a claim. I hope I answered your question. And another question we have, can we implement functionality to impersonate another user using local authenticator? Is it a good place to do it, or is there a better place to achieve this functionality? I think that impersonating another user from a local authenticator is not a good practice. I'll have to check for another option that we need to, where we can achieve this functionality. So if you can raise this question in our Slack channel, our team will be happy to help. And also I also can check it on further and help you. So I have provided the link in the provided the link to our Slack channel in the presentation. So you can raise your questions there. Okay. So yes, that's it we have to now. So yes, please feel free to raise your questions in our Slack channel. So our team will be happy to help. Yes. Okay, then thank you everyone for joining our today's session. I hope you got some idea on how to implement a local authenticator for identity server. So let's meet. Okay. Okay, let's meet in another episode of Identity in 15. So stay safe and take care. Bye bye.